All right. Well, I'm Kirby Sneen with the Manufacturers Alliance, and this presentation is on letting go without completely losing control. Excited to be able to share with you some personal experiences, some motivations, and a little bit of what's worked and what hasn't. To kick things off, I actually started putting together a list of some of the things that have really motivated me to let go. I think it'll be helpful because I think it'll actually help all leaders find motivation and a little bit of a rationale. So I've got a bit of a top 5 list for you to get started here. Number 1 is that I actually think it's really hard to find skilled talent these days, and when you look back over the last few years. And so when you do find someone that's got some great skills, some great experiences, and they're a great cultural fit, that's like a really unique combination. And so you want to be able to make sure that they're engaged, and you want to make sure that you give them opportunity. And so I think that's just a really big motivating factor, because the big one here is that you don't want to let all that go to waste. So that's my number 1. Number 2 is I would say that there's a lot of pressure these days to do more with less, or in my case, to actually do more with the same. I feel that pressure on a regular basis, whether it is the cost of healthcare going up, wages going up, the cost of raw materials going up. There's lots of pressure, whether it's on me or on anyone in the industry really, to be able to do more with less, or like I said, do more with the same. Number 3 here is giving others a chance to learn something new. I will never forget the conversation I had 2 years ago with an executive at member company Boston Scientific, and his number 1 message to me at the time as we were getting caught up is that he's got to keep his team challenged. Now, he's got a large team. They're heavily focused on operational excellence corporation-wide. And so I know that he wants to engage every individual and he wants to retain his team. He's got a full team of A players. And so he wants to do everything he can to make sure that he gives them a chance to learn something new, because he knows that that domino effect is only going to be in his favor. So giving others a chance to learn something new is really, really big. The next one here, number 4, in a nutshell, less doing, more designing. What do I really mean here? Less doing of the specific day-to-day task, and more designing systems. So it kind of depends on your perspective. So whether you are looking at a series of tasks or steps that are part of a process, or maybe you're looking at a process, multiple processes that fit within a system, or maybe you're even looking at multiple systems that are going to strategically fit within a function, or maybe you've got that multifunctional responsibility within a business unit. But you've got to be able to put all the pieces together and think more strategically about those things, and you can't do that if you're really focused on the minute by minute, hour by hour if you will, task. So less doing, more designing of those systems. And then number 5 here, this is a really big one for me in terms of why I let go, but preventing yourself, really preventing myself from burning out. The reality is that the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And so I think it's important to make sure that you don't burn out, you remain healthy. Work and business is, it's very much a marathon, not a sprint. And you don't have to do it all yourself. You've got a great team. Identify their skills, engage them as much as you possibly can, and really prevent yourself from burning out. So a lot of motivating factors here for me over the years, and maybe this will give you some language, to really spell out what might motivate you to let go. And all that said, I still have this big tension that I've wrestled with. And so the tension is this, basically. On one end of the spectrum, I know that if I don't stay involved, or I've had this thought, I have this belief, if I don't stay involved, quality or sales will slip. And it's that key word there, slip. What if it slips, right? And so that's one end of the spectrum of this personal tension that I feel. The other end of the spectrum then is that if I stay involved, I'm the bottleneck. Nothing's going to scale, if I'm micromanaging or if you're in there and you're micromanaging. And so you want to be able to scale. You don't want anything to slip. What's the best balance? And so these feelings that I've had kind of let me look and feel like this kid on the screen right now, like still like really excited about the opportunities in front of you and, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, but screaming like, how do you balance this? What's the perfect balance? And so really, whenever I've got strong emotions, strong feelings, I always think to myself, okay, that's good. Like, don't disregard those, acknowledge that, but then verify it with facts. And so that was my next step. And I've got just a few stories that I think exemplify that I wanted to share with you. So this first story, I'll take you back 5-6 years ago. I was responsible for our new member intake. Now, when I took it over, we were clipping along at about 20 new members a year. We would go to 30 and up to 40 new members a year. And it was really about being able to onboard them, engage them, support them with training education as much as you could. And I eventually let go of that responsibility. This is Monica Smith on the team. And she took it over and was able to work her way up to 95 of these new member intakes that we call them. And so as you can see, 95 is a whole lot more than 40. And so it's just a simple fact, there's simple math that letting go led to even more engagement and even more new member intakes. And so it's great because, there's been a couple of instances where she said, hey, why don't you come in and jump in on this one for, her reasons, and there's a few there. And likewise, there's been a couple of occasions where I've jumped in and I've said, hey, I'd like to be a part of this one. And so there's a little bit of involvement there, a little bit of back and forth and collaboration, which is good, not a lot, like maybe 5 or 6 in a given year. But here's the best part. She gets to work independently while still allowing for some constructive feedback. So it's letting go without completely losing control. So a great success story. Another quick success story for you is that I was responsible for our podcast in when we kicked it off in 2020. Now, I went to school for audio engineering for a couple of years, went to Hennepin Technical College in Eden Prairie, and just really valued the opportunity to be able to do the podcast for the Manufacturers Alliance. So here's the problem, though, is that, I'm just the classic tinkerer. And so I would spend up to 3 hours per episode editing. I'll admit it was way too much time. I enjoyed it. We had to get it up and running, but that's just a lot of time editing for one episode, especially when you're doing as many as we did. So, eventually, fast forward, was able to hand that off to Gabby Stelly. And here's a picture of her when she took it over now. She literally gets that editing done within minutes after recording that episode. Literally 15 minutes after the episode, she's hitting publish and there's an MP3 and we're ready to rock and roll. Yeah, I may be involved in some basic troubleshooting, but we've got templates, we've got standards. Here's what this profile for this audio snippet should look like. And so it's really dialed in. The best part, though, is that now she's got control of the creative and really has the opportunity to take things to the next level, right? And so she's doing just that. So it's a great success story. Another success story about just letting go is that so I'm responsible for hosting webinars like these. It's a ton of fun, don't get me wrong. But what if I win the lottery? Now, don't get me wrong. It would have to be a big ticket. We're talking Powerball, mega millions. But what if I win the lottery? I would seriously consider some things, right? And so I thought, hey, I've got to have a backup and I've got to have someone that could take over. And that's where Jeremy Blake comes into play here. So here's a picture of Jeremy. And as you can see, if you're watching the live version of this, he's doing a great job. And now I have a backup. And so didn't have a backup. Now I've got a backup. Here's the great part, though, is that, he does great in the spotlight and the potential is there for him to be even better than me. So I absolutely love that and really grateful for that. And then here's the conclusion. So the big concluding thought, after I was able to kind of balance those feelings with some facts and experiences, is that letting go doesn't actually have to mean that you'll lose control. It's false. It doesn't actually have, one thing equal the other. And so I think the real question is, well, how did this happen and how can you help this happen for yourself? So this, on the next slide here, it's a basic process and it can actually become as sophisticated as you need it to be to fit your specific needs. 4 steps: tell, show, do, review. So when you go through this process of delegation and you tell someone, the first thing you got to tell them is, well, why is this really, really important? Why do we need you to take this on? And then where do you fit in this? And then why do you really matter in this particular task or process? Then you got to quickly tell them, hey, here's what to do and here's how to do it, right? Whether you're referencing that Word document, that Excel spreadsheet, kind of, hey, step by step, how does this work? Then you quickly move into what most people want to jump right into is the, hey, show me how to do this. Can you give me a picture of what good looks like? Whether it's an actual picture of a step in a process or maybe a short video on how these 3 steps all work together in this cell, this line, you name it. So you got to show what to do, how to do it, and again, kind of what good looks like, and then quickly give them an opportunity to do it. Have them do it once, twice, maybe 3 times, whatever's appropriate for the task at hand. And you've got to really be a good student of their work, because then it becomes your job to be able to do the review. So you want to be able to review their work and be able to help them in some cases. Maybe there's an area in the step where they're not meeting the standard, help them meet the standard. Or maybe there's an area in the process where they met this standard and you say, hey, great job, that's exactly what the goal is. Or even acknowledging in some cases, hey, this was the standard, you actually took it to the next level, that should be the new standard, right? And so you got to give them credit for that too. So you got to provide that constructive feedback. So like I said, this 4-step process, the process to delegate, tell, show, do, review, can be really effective in delegation. And when done successfully, I think you can have some great results. I've had great results with this. Essentially, it's led to happy team, which leads to happy customers. Here's a picture of our immediate team on this particular slide. Some of the big outcomes for me, some of the big accomplishments are quicker decision making. So, one of the ways that we compete is to be able to respond to the customer quickly, and so it's nice to be able to have a team that's equipped and engaged to do just that. It's also nice to have more people making more improvements, right, to keep up with that pace of competitiveness and then outpace some of those costs that I mentioned earlier in the presentation. Because if you continue that you'll have long-term sustainment and competitive advantage. So more people making more improvements. The other one that we've benefited from is just having that engaged team. It's led to higher retention, a little less turnover, which is really nice, because turnover is really expensive. But the last one here I wanted to share, and I have to acknowledge, is the cultural component. Just avoiding this whole I have to wait to be told to do anything type culture just means a lot to me. And so it's nice to be able to have that here. What really led up to all this? Yes, it was the process that I shared and the effectiveness of that process and effectively using it. But the success factors go beyond that. There were some things in place that led to some of those bigger accomplishments that I just shared. And so you could see them on the screen now. In many cases, we do have clear standards, goals, and a process. Again, whether you're looking at that Word document, maybe an Excel spreadsheet, that line items out what needs to get done, by when, and by who, and then done or not done, and then color-coded, which is the next bullet point. Those visual controls in a dashboard. Once you have that laid out clearly, whether it's electronically or a whiteboard or a series of whiteboards, then it becomes really easy then to do the next big step. The next big success factor that we've had is the follow-up, the delegation, and the whole don't get lazy. So you could schedule specific times and routines to say, hey, I'm going to check in on this. We're going to meet on this. Here's our standard agenda for this meeting to make sure that these success factors are sustained, because it's really, really important. You got to follow up. You got to follow through. Don't get lazy. It's allowed me to kind of have this nose in, but as much as possible, hands-off approach to work. It hasn't been easy, though. There's been a number of lessons learned and some hiccups along the way, that's for sure. I mean, I will say this. I've looked at my own standard work, and I've seen gaps, and I thought, I got to do something about this. And I would say that it's never too late to start, or in some cases, like restart. So you could start or restart now. You just got to gulp and then move forward with it. So it's never too late. The next one I wanted to share is that you should communicate up front that it's your intent to build trust. Like that's ultimately the goal. Now you usually have to build a certain amount of capability before you take on that responsibility and really demonstrate certain things. But you should front load trust as much as you possibly can and communicate that's your intent up front. You also need to actually, like I just said, communicate that, you need to develop these skills before they're going to be responsible for reaching certain outcomes. So again, develop those capabilities before responsibility. And then the last one here, like I shared earlier, with that tension between I don't want things to slip, but I also don't want to be, the bottleneck and get in the way. Take some of the fears that are there and maybe not like replace them, because you have to acknowledge the fear, but just add facts to it, add the math to it, and then be able to continue to just work through it. I think that combination is really powerful. And then lastly here is that it's always okay to start small, run a pilot. It could be one process with a few steps. You go through the tell, show, do, review process, have some success, build the wins, and then just do more. So just some of the lessons learned that I've had. Before I let you go, I actually want to go a little bit deeper here. And I've got some questions for you to ponder. These are some of the questions that I've thought through that I think will lead to some big insights for you. The big question I want to leave you with is, why do you even want control? Like, what is it under the surface that's leaving you to want to control a situation? So here's some questions to just dig a little bit deeper. Is there a lack of trust? Do you not trust others? Is there some sort of fear of the unknown? I'll tell you right now, you've got to get comfortable with a certain amount of ambiguity and a lack of control if you want to be able to influence and lead more people. But I acknowledge the fear of the unknown. I also acknowledge, because this happened to me yesterday. There is the "this must not happen again" policy that kicks in. I got back from the holidays and it was like, look what happened. That can never happen again. But that stuff happens, and it makes you want to control a situation and just get your hands right into it again. So, if that's the case, acknowledge it and then even question it. If there's a specific policy that was in place because of something that happened a decade ago, does it really need to be there? And then last but not least, do you really need the spotlight? Or could you put the spotlight somewhere else, on a process, on a person, give them the opportunity? If that's the case, I would question, why is the spotlight on you? So just a few questions here as we wrap to help you get to think a little bit deeper about the topic. But thank you very much for the opportunity to present. Again, I'm Kirby Sneen with the Manufacturers Alliance, and this presentation was on letting go without completely losing control.